Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Limitless Wombman Podcast. I am Gina, your naturalistic mystic. This podcast is all about letting your light shine and changing the narrative that we see so much about men and women being like at war with each other. I'm convinced that there is a better way, and I know many of men and women that get on very well with each other. I'm really excited today because, I'm always excited to be on this podcast because I have such an amazing guest. And today's guest is Susan Castle. Susan Castle is an amazing woman. I mean, she's done so many things. She's been a coach and a business trainer since 1996, when she founded Outwith the Dots, originally in Edinburgh, and moved to Dubai in 2002. She founded WLP Success in 2012, and she helps businesses and individuals achieve their full potential with training and development programs, strategic coaching, leadership development, and counseling. She has some amazing, powerful assessment tools, which is how I actually, not how I met her, we were in a mastermind together, but actually I did one of her assessment tools, which was about core values. And it was amazing. It impacted me quite significantly in terms of helping me learn what my top core values were. And they seemed obvious once I knew, but doing the deep dive work made it so much clearer for me. And it's filtered through to my personal life, to work, to everything, to how I approach clients, what I see as important in my life and how I'm guided in many different aspects. Another pretty awesome thing, which I am so impressed about her. I mean, her list is huge. And when you go into the comments, you'll see the breadth of experience and work that she's done. Susan, she likes cold water swimming, and recently swam in Scotland in January in freezing water. By her own very admission, it was freezing.
It was freezing. That's the whole point.
As well as gardening, cooking, and entertaining. She's an amazing coach and very talented at working with organizations worldwide. And I just doing the core values with Susan was so impactful, and I believe will be very useful in a discussion that we're going to have next about how we look at core values within relationships and how that impacts everything else. So I'm going to go over to you, Susan, if you could just introduce yourself and maybe break down a little bit more what the core value assessment tool was about and how it does work for people.
Sure. So thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
I can't believe it was actually a year ago, almost to the day.
Really? How interesting.
That work. So it's really great to hear that you're still using it. You're still using the material and still... and it's still having an impact, which is super cool for me. A lot of coaching stuff kind of comes and goes, and you learn something and you go, oh, that's awesome, and then you forget it. Yeah. But to know and to hear that you're actually still being impacted by that work is just awesome.
It really is.
So the thing about values is we have values, whether we know about them or not. We all live our life through a particular set of values that is unique and powerful to us. The problem is that most of the time we're not aware of it. We're not aware of how we're seeing the world through that filter of our values. And a lot of people think values work is a bit kind of airy-fairy and a bit kind of, do I really need to do that? I'm busy with my job or my business. Do I really need to do this stuff? It's a bit fluffy. But the reality is, once you've got your values nailed and absolute clarity around them, everything in life just gets easier. Decision making's easier, relationships are easier, business decisions are easier, personal decisions are easier, because you can always refer back to those core values and see what's causing you conflict at any point in time, what's making things difficult, what's making decision making difficult, what's making that relationship difficult. And it will always, only 100% of the time, it'll always get back to your values.
True. And I find that has been the case in terms of sometimes you're going against the grain.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that you're going against the grain. And what the grain is your core values. Something might not be quite clicking with what you're trying to do, and you'll be wondering why isn't that working? And with since doing the assessment tool with you, I've been like, because this is not aligning with my core values. And
Yeah.
most of us think we have an understanding of our core values because we think the things that annoy us the most, and maybe that's true to an extent. But what I found was the detail of doing that assessment really broke it down into pieces that made much more sense and made it much easier to pinpoint, rather than being like, oh, I'm just not feeling happy about this. I could like look at this core value. Is it aligning with my core values? And I'll be able to see straight away where it's not working.
Yeah. So there's another thing that happens with values. Your personal core values are one thing, but you will also have a set of business values. Or if you don't have your own business, you'll still have a set of business values. Or the business that you work in has a set of values. And they're not going to be the same. You might have some that are similar. You might have one or two that are the same, but they're not really going to be the same. And the way that they act out in your life is not the same. So one of the powerful things we do with this process, I call it the VIP process, which is values integration. Values integration process actually allows you to understand that your core values and how you live your core values and how you understand your core values, how they operate in action to you, will always come ahead of your business values. Which is why you can work in a company that might not be in total alignment with you and you don't really feel that comfortable, but you can't put your finger on it. But if you look at it in depth, you'll see why. And it's always obvious. I've had people sort of go, oh God, why was that even complicated? Because it just jumps out at you when you do this work. How obvious it is.
100%, 100%. I think it's quite invaluable. I'm really happy that I did the assessment, and it really is something that I think is quite relevant to relationships, learning what your personal core values, because as I ask you a few questions as we go along, you'll see what I mean when what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to ask, and I ask many of my guests this question, is can you tell me about the biggest challenges you faced as a woman, and how you overcame them?
Ooh. Well, that's a bit deep.
Yep.
Lots of challenges. What was interesting for me was I started out my career in marketing and then got involved in graphic design and actually set up my own graphic design company back in, I think it was 1990, 91. It's a long time ago. I'm very old. And up until that point, I'd had a reasonably high-powered career. I've been marketing manager for the Scotsman newspaper. I had been marketing manager for British Coal. Yeah, I'd done some great jobs. I'd really enjoyed a good career. And then when I decided to take redundancy from British Coal and set up my own business, up until that point, I hadn't really experienced that level of misogyny in the workplace until I had my own business. And then I would get salespeople coming in the door and saying, oh, can I speak to the boss, dear? I was like, and the first couple of times I was annoyed with it. After a while, I just started playing with it. So there was one fabulous day where a color printer salesman came into the office, and we were actually looking to upgrade the printer that we had. And he came in and he started chatting to me, and I said, oh, this is really interesting. Yeah. And he kept saying to me, I kept giving him the buying signals because he was actually offering me a really good price. I kept telling him, yeah, that's great. That's really good. He kept discounting it. And then he kept saying, so can you speak to your boss and see if they can make a decision? I couldn't believe that he wasn't seeing what I was doing to him. And I just kept pulling the price down, pulling the price down. And eventually I went, well, mate, I am the boss. So I make the decision. And actually, it pisses me off that I'm going to have to buy from you because you've really pissed me off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was weird because it was one of the first times I'd ever actually experienced it as directly.
Yes. I can imagine.
So yeah, being a woman in business is interesting.
Yeah.
People make
I,
assumptions about you.
and so
Um,
sorry. Yeah, go on.
being a woman in leadership, again, is interesting. You know, men can be assertive and they can be powerful leaders. Women are just bossy and bitches.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been an interesting trip.
Sounds it, especially being a leader. So in an industry that probably had a majority of men, which a lot of industries, to be fair, seem to have, unless it's around the caring and such things like that. So
Yeah.
what would you say is a pivotal moment in your life then that led you to embrace your potential and really just find your light and shine, really?
Um, I had a big aha moment when I first discovered coaching because this is back in the mid 90s and coaching really wasn't a thing.
Mm.
You know, when a friend of mine said he had a coach, I thought he was going to the gym. And then when he explained to me what the coach was doing, it was like, oh, I like this idea. So that was my first big leap. And then the first time I was coached, I had a huge aha moment because I just went, this is what I want to do when I grow up. I don't actually want to be in the design world anymore. This is what I want to do. I want to make a huge difference to people's lives and I want to empower them to be who they really are deep down inside. And I think the second big leap was when we made the decision to move to Dubai. And it was about this time of year, actually. It was the end of March. Um, we were in Edinburgh. There was horizontal sleet going past the window. And my husband walked in. It was Saturday morning. My husband walked in and he said, I've just been offered a job in Dubai. What do you think? And I looked out the window and went, hell yeah, let's do it. Because at that time I was coaching full time. And it was really easy for me to just pick it up and say, yeah, let's go for it. And a lot of people said to me, how could you make that decision so quickly? Um, Partly because it was in alignment with my values. And also because I said, yeah, I kept saying to people, planes fly both directions. If I don't like it, we'll come back.
That's a lovely
You know,
thought.
yeah, it's a big decision, but you know, almost all decisions are undoable.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting because that is a pivotal moment. And you're talking about pivoting. You know,
Mm,
people often think that everything you make a decision and you have to stick by it and stay with that, and that's all there is. But
yeah,
actually, you can turn it around anytime and go
yeah,
where you want. You don't have to be stuck with anything. So I love that example that you gave of just in the moment saying, yes, that's what I'm going to do. And
mm,
being open to that change rather than, I think a lot of people, what they might do is you start thinking of all the things that could go wrong. Just as you were saying, all the things that, all the issues, all the boundaries, all the things that would be in the blocker.
yeah,
Those are the things that people think of because they think we have to be safe, risk averse, and all this lot. But
yeah.
actually, what if it goes really well? And it sounds like it did for you. It sounds like it was an amazing experience. And also leaving the sleep behind and going to the sun.
Well, that was really nice. I was actually flicking through some photographs the other day, and there's a picture of me and a client working in our garden, and the mango trees behind me, and the fountains bubbling away, and the sunshine's. We're under the gazebo, so we're in the shade, and I can remember just how that felt, and it was
Yeah,
really wonderful. But hey,
that's
I'm back in Scotland now, and that's wonderful as well.
yeah, swimming in the freezing cold sea.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's yeah, swimming in Loch Lomond on New Year's Day was quite an experience.
I bet it was. So, so this is obviously about, the narratives between men and women and women and men, whichever way you want to say it. I try to say it the other way around because it always seems to be men leading. But what do you think is a common misconception about women or men that you think we need to address in order to bridge the gap in communication between the genders?
Ooh, it's another very good question. I think one of the most challenging things that we have to overcome is this idea that women are emotional decision makers. Because the reality is that everyone is an emotional decision maker. Decisions are always based on emotions, and those emotions are driven by your values. There's an old saying in sales that people will make decisions with emotions, and they'll reject by logic.
Yes.
And that's true for men and women. So I'm just going to move out the sun here because it's
Yeah.
really bright. So yeah, we all do that. We make decisions with emotion, and then we justify those decisions with logic, or we justify rejecting them with logic.
Mm.
So I don't think women are any more emotional than men. Sometimes I think we're a lot less. Sometimes I think we can be brutally logical and
Yeah.
practical.
Yes. Yes.
Um, yeah, we are different, but we're not that different.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think that this is actually a very good point that you're making about the emotions and logic. And this is kind of a space where you can use your core values.
Mm,
This is a very good space where you can be having, so you could be having a discussion, you'd be making a choice. And as a female, you can navigate that with your core values. And so if you're being judged as a female saying you're being emotional, you can come back to, when you know and feel comfortable about your core values, you can come back to, actually, my core values are this, and it actually is so much stronger than then. Emotions are very powerful and they are driven by something and they are useful. But also, when people think you're going by your emotions, especially if you're a female, they think it's fluffy, they think it's not thought through.
mm,
So having a set of core values that you really believe in, that you know are yours and actually have worked for you and make sense to you, then solidifies any decision that you're going forward with. And you can
yeah.
pivot at any time because you can be like, well, actually, the reason that's probably not worked is because it's been going against my core values. And actually, I'm going to try something different. So I love.
Yeah. It's so easy to be caught up in the emotion and the excitement of making a decision.
Mm,
And you probably have this little voice in the back of your head going, you sure? You really sure? And the power of having done this work is that you can be really sure. You can just go back to your core values and say, what's niggling here?
mm.
Why am I having this? I'm excited to do this thing, but there's something that's niggling. And when you look at your core values, almost every single time it will jump out at you. And the same way when you're in a relationship that you're struggling with and you look at the core values, it'll always jump out at you.
Absolutely.
And so, if you're struggling with that relationship, and you don't know why, and you want the relationship to work, when you look at both of you look at your core values and compare them, there's going to be a mismatch there. And that doesn't mean that the relationship has to not work. It just means that when that person pisses you off in that particular way, this is why.
I love that. Such a good, so many solutions.
Yeah.
And this is a bit the juicy bit, really, because I'd love to know how you personally navigate misunderstandings or communication barriers in your own relationships, or say like with your partner, because we're talking about relationships between men and women here. I mean, you can relate it to platonic ones, but I'd be really interested to hear. You sound like you've had a long, successful marriage, so it'd be nice to hear some advice from someone who has. And
Certainly been long.
eh?
It's certainly been long.
Oh, there you go. And that takes work. That's not just like a magic. We all know that relationships take work. So how do you think having such a deep knowledge of your own core values and your husband's core values, how do you think that that's helped you in your communications or misunderstandings with your husband?
I think what it does is it allows you to be empathetic and to have compassion for the other person. Even if you do want to batter them about the head at the time and they're really pissing you off. But knowing what their values are, it's quite easy to do okay, let's take a deep breath here and let's go back to our core values and let's look at, I mean, we don't have those kind of conversations because that would be really weird. But just knowing that they're not being annoying to be annoying, they're being annoying because they're being driven by their core values. So
Yeah.
it allows you to have empathy and it allows you to have compassion, which is really the starting point for solving problems and solving issues. Because once you understand that, you understand that they're doing it for their reasons and their reasons are good reasons.
Yeah.
Nobody ever does anything for bad reasons.
Yeah.
You know, we look at some people who are behaving really badly and we think, how can they do that? They're doing it because what they're doing is in alignment with their values. And the reason we think we can ask the question, how can you do that? Is because those values are completely in opposition to ours.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's so, I love what you're saying. It's like they're not doing it to be annoying. Like
Yeah.
people are just fighting their corner, just going on their journeys, just trying to make it through. And
Yeah. And
have
people are not trying to be, for the most part, they're not trying to be nasty. And if they are trying to be nasty, it's usually because they're in survival mode, because they are feeling very, very threatened.
yeah.
So it's really easy to attack people. And it's really easy to basically make the assumption that you're right and they're wrong. But that's not helpful in the situation. It might well be that you're right and they're wrong, but having that, facing up to them with that is not helpful. It's not going to solve the problem.
No.
So the only way to solve the problem is through understanding and through compassion and empathy.
Yeah. And so far, everyone I've spoken to is really compassion and empathy are things that come up a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the more you develop an understanding of what that is, the better you get at it, the
Yeah.
better you are with other people, and the more compassion and empathy you give yourself. So, for example, you talking about learning your core values means that you can have some compassion for yourself and you can see that, oh, actually, the reason I'm feeling this way at the moment, it's not going with my core values. You can have a bit of empathy for yourself and say, maybe that's why I was sticking my guns in about something. It wasn't so much what they were doing. It was that it was going against my core values. And I think the more of these are all just tools. There's so many tools that people can use to dig into who their personalities, because we all think we know ourselves. We do to a point, but sometimes we're hiding behind a lot of wounds and we don't.
And also we're hiding behind should-ofs.
Yeah,
You should do this, you should be like this, you should. And those are things that we've learned from our families, from our parents, from our communities. And they don't necessarily apply to us. So when you're in a situation with a should have, or you should do this, that should is challenging your values. And that's why it feels like a should, as opposed to a yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I see what
And
you
one of the
mean.
other things that's really lovely is that when you do align yourself with your values, your relationships are much deeper. So yes, some relationships will fall away because they're just too out of alignment with you. Some will definitely fall away. But what happens is the relationships you have are based much more on, well, when they're based on common values. So I'll give you an example of this. This is a few years ago now. When I was working in Dubai, I had a big leadership conference for one of my favorite clients. And it was over a weekend, and he'd got all of his people together from all over the Middle East and North Africa. And I was doing a big part of the training. And I got a phone call from my mum to say, your dad's in hospital and he needs surgery. And he was getting surgery that weekend. And because my top personal value was family, my top core value was family, but my top business value was service delivery, doing what I said I was going to do, following through with commitments. And so I had a real dilemma because this had been organized for a good few weeks, months even. And how was I going to tell this client that I couldn't do it? Now, my dad was typical, my dad. He was very, very practical. He said, don't be ridiculous. I'll be in hospital. I'll be fine. I'm being taken care of. Do the job and then come back to Scotland when you've done it. Because it was only 2 days, but it happened to be those particular 2 days. And I thought about it. And my mum had a hairy fit when she heard that. And I thought about it. I thought, well, I can't actually deliver at my best while my poor dad's in hospital getting surgery. So I spoke to the client, and I did know him quite well. I've been working with him for a while. And I said, look, this is the situation. What do you think? And he just looked at me and went, I can't believe you're even asking me this. Go home, be with your family. This is far more important than our stuff. We'll rearrange and we'll do it another time. And there was just no question about it. So I wasn't letting him. I said, I feel bad because I'm letting you down. He said, you're not letting me down. He said, you'd be letting me down a hell of a lot more if you did it and you did the work and your head wasn't in the right space. And you'd be letting you down, you'd be letting me down a lot more. He said, if I had discovered that you had done this and this was happening in your family,
Wow.
he said, I would have felt absolutely dreadful. And the point of that was that rather than letting him down, we actually deepened our relationship. And we did loads more work together over the years. And he turned out to be one of my favorite clients. He already was quite a favorite client, but it really deepened that relationship. It really deepened the level of trust that we had.
Mm.
And what I realized later is if he had reacted badly, that would have been one of the relationships that would fall away. Because if he had reacted badly to that situation, what does that say about who he is in relation to who I am and how our values
Mm.
align?
Yeah, that's really powerful. Because what I got from that as well was, so because of how well you knew your core values, you were able to talk to him with confidence
Mm,
about your dilemma. To get
yeah,
what I mean? Because
yeah,
you standed confident in your core value, but you knew what the other one was. So you were able to approach him authentically with some earnestly and say, look, this is really important to me working with you, which is one of your core values. So you were able to express that in a way that it aligned with him
yeah,
and him realize how important he was, whilst also expressing your core values about your family, and what you needed to do. And as you said, because you align, it went smoothly. And if it doesn't align, rather than, because what some people might do is be like, oh, this is terrible, I'm going to look really bad, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. It's nothing about looking really bad or this, that, and the other. It's just
mm,
that your core value was to provide a good service. And you
yeah,
were feeling you couldn't do that. but your other.
And I know I have to admit, I was tempted to just push through
Mm,
because that's what I've been trained to do, is
mm,
to just separate work from personal stuff and just push through and deliver. But I knew that I wasn't going to deliver a great job
mm.
because my body would be in Dubai and my head would be
Scotland.
my heart would be in Scotland.
Mm,
So it was important that I gave him that chance, that choice.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, it worked out really well. So the point is that your most challenging decisions will always come when your top values are in conflict with each other. Whether they're your top core values or your top business values or a combination of the two. But when they're in conflict with each other, that's when it's really tough to make a decision. And that's when it's really powerful to have done this process. And
yeah,
because when I looked at it and I went, family is my top core value, my top personal value, it has to go that way. Otherwise, it's just going to feel wrong.
mm. And there was also that extra thing about the energy that you would be able to put into something when you're not following your core value.
Yeah.
And that also follows through with relationships, you
Yes.
know. So for me, as a, one of my top core values is authenticity. And um, if I can't be authentic to who I am, or if
Yeah.
I sense uh, inauthenticity with somebody, that will be a conflict for me. Like, I will feel it.
Yeah.
As they say, better a hard truth than a something, I can't remember the other, than a lie. Because a lie was, if you're someone that doesn't care about things like that, then it wouldn't matter. You can
Yeah.
be lied to all day long. But if you're someone who does care about that, and your energy is not taken to something, then you're going to feel that. If your top core value is communication, and you're with someone who doesn't really talk, doesn't really want to communicate,
Yeah.
then you're going to have a problem, because you're going to want to talk things out and they're not going to want to talk things out.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
you kind of like working at this thing where you're just like not getting anywhere and wondering what's
Spotting
going on.
heads at that point.
Yeah. But as
Yeah.
you said, just because your core values are not, and you weren't, it's rare to find someone who's perfectly spot on. This is the world and we are human beings.
It
But
can be really boring as well, to be
it would
honest.
be extremely boring, extremely boring. I mean, there are people out there that have, but it depends on what sort of core values they are. If they're very, you can have very similar core values, and then that's fine.
Mm.
But I think,
And that's one of the
mm,
things that's really important in the VIP session is that you describe how you put those values into action.
yes,
So, one of my good friends is very, very senior in the military.
hmm
And one of his top values is peace. And a lot of people look at that and go, what? How can? But he sees that value in action. When he's putting that value into action, he's working on communication, he's working on diplomacy, he's working on keeping peace, making peace possible. And one of his very good friends is actually one of the I don't know what you describe them now. Basically, he's a pacifist. He's an anti-nuclear uh,
hmm
campaigner, and the two of them have the most extraordinary arguments. But the point is, their high-level values are identical. They
mm,
just have a different way of going about it.
yeah, yeah,
But you don't see that until you delve deep into how you put the values into action.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So most people will just say, "Well, my top value is family,"
yeah, yeah,
um, and then people look at them and go, "Really? I don't see that." Well, the reality is your top value is what you say it is.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
And if you can't justify it, if you can't say this is how I put it into action, then maybe you have to look at it. So I'm going to move this thing again. We've got sun in Scotland, so Hey,
Well, we've
not
got a little bit
complaining,
of sun
but
in London, but not so much.
I am not going to complain about sun, but it's so yes,
So,
how you put your values into action that is the absolute key.
yeah. So, thinking I always get so carried away chatting with everybody. I never go through all of my questions because I get such good conversations. I just get drawn into what you're saying, and you've given me so many gems. And actually, in speaking to you, a lot of the questions we've spoken about, you've actually answered. So I'm gonna actually now. I first of all, I love what you was that bit you said about the two guys, one who's a pacifist and one who's in the army, and how and I can actually see how people who are in the army think that they are doing no, not think, sorry, because I don't want to undermine that that's their view.
Mm.
That I can see how they view being part of the army as keeping peace,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can see that because they
Yeah.
think by going in and doing these measures, then there'll be peace in that land. So I can see that. And then
Yeah.
for pacifists, I can see it's much easier to see peace from a pacifist point of view than it is to
Mm-hmm.
see it from someone who's in the army or any of those services, because
Yeah.
all you think about is they're going to war and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. But actually, the aim of what they're doing is to find peace. So
Yeah.
that was a really good example, and I love that. And it also shows,
That's why looking at your high level values
yeah,
is where you're going to come to an agreement. If you look
yeah,
at lower level values, then it's really easy to have conflict.
yeah. And it is about and this is where the empathy and compassion comes in. It's
Yeah.
about rising above things and looking at people compassionately and listening to what they're saying
Yeah.
rather than coming with your own agendas and attacks.
You're wrong, I'm right.
Yes, that real wrong I'm right is not gonna that's not gonna be a good
Never going to solve
they're
anything.
never gonna be any good for diplomacy.
No.
So
And it doesn't actually matter how strongly you believe
yeah.
you're wrong, I'm
Mm,
right. Even
mm,
if you believe it absolutely at the core of your being,
mm,
acting on that belief is
mm.
not going to ever solve any problems.
Yeah, and I think making someone wrong leaves no space for compassion or empathy.
Yeah.
You've just kind of cancelled them out. You've not even
Yeah.
given any validation to what they're saying. You've not listened to what they're saying. You've just made a judgment, and that's always gonna be frictioned.
Mm.
So one of the things I always like to ask every guest, and I did ask you to prepare something, I hope you have, is a favorite or most inspiring quote that you'd like to share with the audience, something that you live by, or something that you just think is a very good point, it's very valid, and people should think about in their lives.
Ooh, there's so many. There's so many fabulous quotes out there.
I
I think the one I like most is, and is really relevant to what we've been talking about today, is minds, like parachutes, work best when open.
love that. I'm gonna write that down because I want to make sure I quote that. Minds like parachutes. Minds are like parachutes. And what did you say? I've heard it saying
They
before.
work best when open.
They work best when open. That's so true. That's so brilliant. I love that.
So fundamentally, if you're ever in a situation where you want to punch somebody's lights out, which it happens, we're human,
Yeah.
just take a breath
Yeah.
and think, how could this be? How could they think that way? And maybe you still want to persuade them to think differently, but
Yeah.
you're not going to be persuading them if you're conflicting with them.
Yes, because
So
that's the
rather than conflicting with somebody, you dance with them.
I like it.
I've done that exercise a few times with when I do team building
Mm,
workshops, where I say, right, two people stand, push your hands up against each other, and one of you try and push the other one out of the way. And one of two things will happen. One of them will be bigger and stronger than the other. And, oh, sorry, the cat's just come past. One of them will be bigger and stronger and push the other one over, or they'll both be equally matched and they'll both wear each other out.
yeah.
And then what you do is you say, right, let me take the place. And you just, instead of pushing back, you just dance.
Yeah.
and you start
I love
dancing, and
that.
everybody laughs.
I love that. So,
Um,
Anthony, can you tell me, what are you up to at the moment? Is there anything that you want to share? What programs are you working on at the moment? Is there anything I forgot to mention that you're also an author, which is
yeah,
pretty awesome. So, are you
yeah.
working on any books? Are you working on a new program, or is there anything that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up and round off this afternoon?
Well, I'm always open to doing the VIP exercise with people. So if anybody would like to do it, it takes about 2 hours and it's
Yeah,
pretty intense. Don't plan to do anything afterwards because your brain will be fried.
mm,
Um, it's about 2 hours, but it will impact you on a very, very deep level and continue to impact as you've discovered.
yeah. I swear by it. I absolutely highly recommend it to anybody watching this to do it. I still use it as Susan said. I did this a year ago, and I'm still implementing it. And I still think about my core values. I think about them quite frequently, actually, because I do a
Yeah.
lot of writing and stuff like that. So I do think about my core values when I'm writing, and what is it that I'm trying to project and here let people know about, and my core values play a lot into that.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, Susan?
All over the place, but because I'm very old and I've been on the internet forever, um, I'm on LinkedIn as Susan Castle. So it's LinkedIn/Susan Castle because I was the first Susan Castle to join LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook.
Cool.
I've got pink hair in Facebook, not red, but find me on Facebook as Susan Castle. I'm on Instagram as Susan the Coach.
Excellent.
I think I'm on TikTok as Susan the Coach as well, and I'm on Blue Sky as Susan the Coach. I'm not on Twitter anymore because that was not in alignment with my values. Um,
Cool.
where else am I? Pretty much everywhere.
Excellent. So anybody watching this who's really enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, to like, and to share. And I will be putting all of Susan's contact details in the comments, in the information below. So when you come on, just remember to have a little look, and you can get in contact with Susan to do this amazing assessment. But yes, do not forget to subscribe and like this YouTube video, because we want more viewers and we want more people to get in contact with us about how they navigate their relationships and bridging the gap between women and men. So thank you, Susan, for being on my podcast. I really
Sure,
have
as
enjoyed
always.
talking to you. And yeah, so that's it, everybody. Speak to you at the next episode. Bye.
Bye.